Hi there, welcome to another episode of 411 Pop Culture. This is your host, Justin Steele. There are few things worse for fans of popular culture than to have a television show that you have followed, fallen in love with, and then to find out that it has been canceled and will not be returning for another season, especially if it ended on a cliffhanger. Writers, showrunners, stop ending seasons on cliffhangers. If a show is truly good, it will bring audiences back the following season. Yes, cliffhangers from episode to episode are fine, but if there is no guarantee for return, stop generating unnecessary heartache for the fans of your shows. In fact, there are many shows I won't even begin to watch unless I know that there are 4 or 5 seasons, or that I know that the series is about to end and it will have a definitive conclusion. As follows is a list of some of our all-time favorite great shows that had an incomplete ending that left us all devastated or were just in general canceled too soon. Some of them may have had pieces of resolution in other forms or media, but the initial work left us feeling empty. The first show on our list is Lost in Space. Based on the idea of the Swiss Family Robinson in space, 1965's Lost in Space is one of the many ideas of master of disaster whiz Irwin Allen. Irwin Allen was the brainchild of many popular films and shows such as The Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, and Land of the Giants. Lost in Space follows the Robinson family as they travel to Alpha Centauri on the Jupiter 2. After the devious Dr. Smith sneaks aboard and fiddles with their robot, the Jupiter 2 is thrown off course. This series is particularly nostalgic for me. I will always remember watching Lost in Space with my oldest brother every Saturday morning. Reruns aired on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I couldn't wait to see what hijinks Dr. Smith would get up to dragging Will and the robot along for the fun. Many of the episodes focused on the Robinsons marooned on one planet or another, but my favorite episodes were always the ones where the Jupiter 2 would be floating in space having to deal with one disaster after another. There was certainly a sci-fi quality that, while long since has been disproven as illogical, at the same time it seemed pretty awesome. It was the ideas of where we could go in space, the adventures that we could possibly have. During the second season, the focus of the show had shifted to focusing on the comic relief of Dr. Smith, played by Jonathan Harris, and while Harris became iconic in the role, the series started to take a campier approach to its episodes. Another influence was the celebrated campiness of the 1960s Batman television program. Behind-the-scenes struggles led to the show eventually getting back on track, and the third season showed the Robinsons back in space a lot more. In fact, one of my all-time favorite episodes occurs in the third season. The episode is called The Space Creature and encapsulates a truly terrifying atmosphere. Members of the Robinson family begin to disappear, and Will finds himself more and more isolated. He is forced to fight his fears in order to defeat the creature. While the episode cops out in the end, the overall sequences leading up to the climax are more than effective. However, the third season also led to some of the most maligned episodes of the series, such as The Great Vegetable Rebellion. TV Guide named it one of the greatest episodes of TV. However, actors Guy Robinson and June Lockhart were unable to control their laughter during the making of the episode and were suspended for the next couple of shows. Ultimately, the series ended on a cliffhanger called Junkyard in Space, which is aptly named for the show was canceled and left in a metaphoric television junkyard. While phrases such as Danger Will Robinson will live on in popular culture forever, one can only imagine where this show could have gone if it had received a proper end. Will Robinson actor Billy Mumy tried throughout the years to continue the story and even approached Irwin Allen with an idea to continue. He was turned down, and the next incarnation did not come until the 1998 film. Not particularly well received, the 1998 film had a few good moments but did not achieve the iconic legacy left behind from the original series. Personally, I felt the film would have been well served to have Billy Mumy portray the older version of Will Robinson, and filmmakers thought this would be confusing, but I think it would have cemented a certain needed nostalgic element and link to the original series. The series had a few attempts at new incarnations on TV throughout the years, and in 2018, Netflix finally released a new version. While deviating away from certain ideas, the overall concept of the new series is promising. It has not had a dynamic start, but the reviews have been mostly positive. By the last couple of episodes of the first season, the show started to gain momentum. I look forward to seeing what happens next season. Still, I will always wish to see what could have happened if the original run had had a proper conclusion. The next series on our list canceled way too soon is the WB series Popular. Popular is a satirical, hyper-dramatic version of high school life, created by Ryan Murphy, who would go on to create some of the most memorable and popular TV series of all time, such as Nip Tuck, Glee, and American Horror Story. The show premiered on the WB with other hits such as Dawson's Creek, Felicity, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Popular follows two students on opposite sides of the social scale. In the pilot, it appears as if these two girls could be friends, but this soon falls apart. Played by Carly Pope, Sam is an unpopular girl, strong-willed, and editor of the newspaper. Leslie Bibb portrays Brooke McQueen, the most popular girl at Kennedy High. As they realize they cannot possibly be friends, they soon find out that their respective single parents are dating, and they are definitely going to be in each other's lives, whether they like it or not. Where shows like Dawson's Creek and Felicity attempted a sense of realism, Popular had no shame in using colorful situations and absurd, over-the-top characters to tell its story. Taking a page out of the dramatic primetime aspects of a show like Beverly Hills 90210, but infusing it with at-times slapstick comedy, Popular made itself stand out as different from other WB teen dramas. Arguably ahead of its time, Popular did not quite fit in with what teen audiences were expecting. Still, there was a fun, addictive quality to the show. Popular handled serious issues and used a mix of comedy and drama to make sense of these issues and make them easier to talk about, without being overly preachy. Few shows capture the hilarity of a character such as Mary Cherry, who is the embodiment of teen queen pageant circuit dominators in the social circle of high school life. Played by Leslie Grossman, she seemed like a caricature of a real person. However, anybody a fan of any Real Housewives franchise sees women like Mary Cherry in every episode. The final episode ends on a huge cliffhanger that will unlikely ever be resolved, but the episodes of this overlooked show are more than worth an experience in viewing entertainment. Next up is All American Girl, featuring the first Asian American family to be central to American sitcom, premiered in 1994. Claiming to be based on the comedy of Margaret Cho, this turned out to be not entirely accurate. Cho has a very adult humor, and All American Girl was definitely aiming to be more of a family sitcom. Still, to have the first Korean American family was something special. However, the show soon met with criticism about star Margaret Cho. If ever you get the chance, check out Cho's comedy special, I'm the One That I Want. It goes into detail regarding her experience on and behind the scenes of All American Girl. To sum it up though, she and the show were criticized for all the ridiculous reasons. They were too Korean, then they weren't Korean enough. An enormous and ridiculous amount of pressure was put on Cho to lose weight. Thank God Cho now has the ability to know her own worth and beauty these days, but it's understandable the amount of pressure that would put on a young woman in Hollywood. The show itself was actually really funny, and tried to do inventive things that were way ahead of its time. One episode centered on Margaret's dad trying to hook Margaret up with a guy. This guy turned out to be Quentin Tarantino, of whom she was dating in real life at the time. This was right at the height of his Pulp Fiction fame, so the whole episode revolved around a family-friendly version of Pulp Fiction's themes and ideas. The final episode of the show changed format completely and found Cho getting an apartment with two girls a la Friends. Those behind the scenes retooled the show one too many times, and fans could never get a foothold or chance to really enjoy it. I was in junior high at the time, and I couldn't explain it, but I thought Margaret Cho was the funniest woman on TV. When her first special came out on tape, yup, remember VHS? I had never laughed so hard. Had All American Girl been left in Cho's hands with some perhaps direction to guide it towards a family-friendly audience, I believe that All American Girl would have been a success. The next series canceled way too soon is 1990's Twin Peaks. I was conflicted with adding Twin Peaks to this list because we did finally get some resolution with a third season in 2017 with Showtime's Twin Peaks: The Return. Still, a pop culture phenomenon in 1990, the original series sparked a television programming and With what David Lynch and Mark Frost came up with, it would have been interesting to see where they would have gone. Lynch and Frost came together to show that television could be a different medium used for artistic expression. So, who killed Laura Palmer? With the opening scene depicting Pete Martell discovering the body of Laura Palmer, Twin Peaks would never be the same. Not that it was the most normal of towns to begin with. Viewers joined along with Dale Cooper and every cup of damn fine coffee to try and discover who killed the local duplicitous homecoming queen. We met a unique and quirky set of characters, traveled to parallel worlds where dreams foretold and warned of the future, and past, and present. Still, to this day, the scariest moment I have ever seen on television occurred on Twin Peaks. David Lynch did not want the identity of the killer to ever be revealed, but his hand was forced. If it's possible that you do not know this information, I will not reveal any spoilers here, but let me just say, the entire scene, music, and sequence where everything finally comes to a head is terrifying. It chilled every bone in my body. I can understand Lynch and Frost's logic to not reveal the killer. However, considering their love of cliffhangers, I am glad this plotline was at least completed. But like I said, they love cliffhangers. So even though we know the end to this part of the story, it and the rest of the plotlines continued on. And if you believe in the mythology of this series, are still continuing on, in different universes and time periods. The second season ended on a huge cliffhanger, which was just as intense as finding out who the killer was previously mentioned. It was a mesmerizing experience that freaked me the F out. The show was then canceled, and viewers thought they would find some resolution with the film 1992 Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. The film instead acted as a prequel with minor sequel elements, hinting of course that time is irrelevant. Or everything. Fans of Twin Peaks know what I'm talking about, especially if they finish Twin Peaks The Return. Still, once one gets past the frustration that Fire Walk With Me is not a sequel per se, but makes sense in a nonsensical way that it is a sequel. David Lynch, what can I say? But that film on its own is a masterpiece. A heartbreaking examination of a girl descending into her own personal hell in the last week of her life. Cheryl Lee gives an intense performance, and I think her screams will haunt me forever. The series had some things resolved in 2017 with the mentioned third season on Showtime, but true to David Lynch fashion, only more questions were raised. Both series and films are designed to be interpreted by the viewer and mean something different to everyone, which is as fascinating as it is frustrating. To see where the original series would have gone is something only the man from another place or the giant could possibly know. But that being said, I will continue to hope that the series will continue from where it is now currently left off. Next up is Witches of East End. Premiering in 2013, Witches of East End followed matriarch Joanna Beauchamp, played by Julia Ormond, and Joanna's two daughters, Freya and Ingrid, played respectively by Jenna Dewan and Rachel Boston. Freya and Ingrid are constantly reincarnated due to a curse placed on their mother. These daughters are the newest incarnation and have been oblivious to their powers. Mädchen Amick portrays Joanna's estranged sister Wendy, and she is dealing with her own cat-like curse. The series is a soap operatic feel with supernatural elements thrown in. Freya is involved with local doctor Dash Gardner, but is inexplicably drawn to his brother Killian. The brothers are played by Eric Winter and Daniel D. Tomaso, respectively. Witches of East End was an addictive series that focused on the various cast members' tumultuous relationships while everyone learned of various powers they were obtaining. The series faced constant competition with ratings juggernaut The Walking Dead. And while Witches of East had low viewer ratings, the series remained consistently in second place overall on its viewing night. Witches of East End did manage to run for 2 seasons, and with each episode, new reveals kept the viewer guessing. Unfortunately, the second season ended on a cliffhanger, leaving viewers at a frustrating loss with the lifetime decision to gut the show with cancellation. Social media campaigns on Twitter attempted to get the series renewed. Now, almost 4 years later, there still is about 300,000 signatures signed. But still, there aren't any new episodes of Witches of East End. One can always hope that a streaming service such as Netflix will pick it up as Netflix has done with many beloved hits of the past. Another brilliant series canceled way too soon is Firefly. Created by Joss Whedon, Firefly is a show that was seemingly set up to fail from the beginning. Episodes were aired out of order, only a certain set of episodes came out, while others were not shown until after the show was canceled, which is completely unfortunate because Firefly is a fun ride of science fiction that takes the idea of space westerns and is literally a western in space. At the beginning of the pilot, we see revolutionary soldiers fighting the losing fight at the end of a giant war. Two of these soldiers are Mal, played by Nathan Fillion, and Zoe, actress Gina Torres. We then jump ahead to see that Mal is now the captain of a ship known as a Firefly, and Zoe is his second in command. The Firefly has been named Serenity after the last battle, and Serenity is a registered passenger ship. However, Mal uses this cover to transport goods. These goods are typically illegal items, and if Mal is lucky, they are items that are in one way or another belonging to the Alliance. The rest of the cast is memorable, fun, and have touches of mystery. Alan Tudyk plays Wash, who flies the ship. Marina Baccarin is Inara, a companion/escort that is often at odds with Mal because of their own sexual tension. Adam Baldwin is the rough and tough Jane, and Jules State is the delightful mechanic Kaylee. After a series of incidents on the pilot, certain passengers decide to stay on Serenity. Ron Glass is Shepard Book, who seems to have an unusual bit of insight into criminal knowledge. Rounding out the main cast are Sean Maher and Summer Glow, playing on-the-run siblings Simon and River. Simon was a promising doctor until he rescued his off-the-charts genius sister from a secret Alliance facility. Series of experiments were performed on River, and her mind is now broken. She is at times childlike and lethal. The series had a combination of excitement, fun, mystery, and science fiction elements to make a truly great show. After the series was canceled, the DVD sales from the first season were mind-blowing and demonstrated the network had made a mistake. While fans were given a movie called Serenity to follow up on major story arcs, the film acts as a prequel and sequel to the show. Luckily, audience were given a general idea and revelation of the main themes of where Firefly was to go. Still, having all these ideas crammed into 2 hours was not totally enough. To see how far Firefly could have flown had everything unfolded over 4 or 5 seasons, we will never know. The final released episode called Objects in Space reveals just how brilliant a complete series would have been. The next show on our list is Freaks and Geeks, a show that encapsulated a very specific time and would go on to launch the majority of cast members into superstardom is Freaks and Geeks. Created by Judd Apatow, Freaks and Geeks centered on the two Ware siblings, Lindsay and Sam, played by Linda Cardellini and John Francis Daly. This fictional brother and sister showed us what it was like to navigate high school in the very early 1980s. Lindsay is a once-overachiever that has begun to drift away from a life in socially acceptable academia to hang out with the freaks, played by future stars James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, and Busy Phillips. Sam, on the other hand, is considered by high school standards a geek. His two best friends are Neil and Bill, played by Sam Levine and Martin Starr, and their endearing qualities sometimes give them higher status that they crave, but they are most comfortable playing Dungeons & Dragons or being a part of the AV Club. The show is a poignant look at high school life and what we do to fit in, or more appropriately, a chance at self-discovery. That each person might have certain traits that seem to suggest they belong to a certain group, however, there is always more than meets the eye. And there is always a struggle when we try to become something other than what society thinks we should be. The show was at times funny, as it was touching. Of all the shows on this list, Freaks and Geeks has what I consider to be the most complete arc for a series cut too soon. The most unlikely pairing of friendship comes to pass, and the ending we have feels as satisfying as can be for what is. Nevertheless, for a series full of quirky gems, one can only imagine what such a team would have come up with for the rest of the series had it continued on. Not that they'd give a damn if they had a bad reputation. Next up on this list is My So-Called Life. For teenagers in the early mid-90s, nothing was as devastating than the cancellation of My So-Called Life. Hordes of teenage girls and boys felt that Jordan Canelato was like their own profoundly intense soulmate, or whatever. Developed by the co-creators and writers of 30-something, My So-Called Life was a show centered on a group of teenagers in Pennsylvania. The show was one of the first times that an authentic voice was given to teens growing up in the 1990s. The series starred Claire Danes as Angela Chase, eldest daughter of Patty and Graham and older sister to Danielle. In the pilot episode, Angela leaves behind Sharon Chersky, her best friend since childhood, to start hanging out with Rayanne Graff and Ricky Vasquez. Rayanne is a party hard kind of gal, and Ricky is a bullied gay teen struggling to come out. In the midst of these social changes, Angela has fallen head over heels for Jordan Catalano, played by Jared Leto. As the season progressed, Angela sought out ways to advance her relationship with Jordan while her friendship with Rayanne was tested. Thrown into the mix is Angela's brainy next-door neighbor Brian Krakow. While seeming to annoy her more than not, Brian has an obvious and unrequited crush on Angela. As the series came to a close, the final episode ends on a heart-wrenching, breathtaking, and totally harsh cliffhanger. We watched with angst as Angela finally realized Brian's feelings towards her as she and Jordan drove away in his car. Because of the age of its star Claire Danes as Angela Chase, the series was centered on the teens but also allowed the parental storylines to hit the spotlight. The showmakers had to fill in those schedule gaps, and Patty and Graham's marriage became just as compelling as the teen storylines. Their story arc ended on just as frustrating a cliffhanger. Danes won a Golden Globe for Best Dramatic Actress for her portrayal of Angela. The show was ahead of its time, and unfortunately, the network did not know quite what to do with it. It did not have the soap operatic prime-time drama feel of Beverly Hills 90210, and it was still quite a few years before the WB became a staple of authentic teen drama such as Felicity and Dawson's Creek. The problematic scheduling of filming also took its toll on Danes, and she kind of wanted out. As frustrating as that is for fans, especially those that headed one of the first online fan petitions to keep the show on the air, the incomplete first season took over a year to film. Claire was 13 when My So-Called Life began, and she was 15 when it ended. The show lives on in DVD and on Hulu. While dated now, the quality of the show is timeless. Creator Winnie Holzman has given interviews on where the second season would have gone. We will never know what could have been, but what was a truly unique show that showed that a teen drama could be culturally important, authentic, and compelling. The final show on our list is Carnival. Carnival was a series that conjured feelings of wonder. Running for 2 seasons between 2003 and 2005, this HBO show took place during the Great Depression and specifically the Dust Bowl era. The audience follows 2 separate storylines that were destined to explosively connect. The first storyline follows escaped convict Ben Hawkins, played by Nick Stahl, as he reluctantly joins a traveling carnival. The second storyline follows minister brother Justin Crowe, played by Clancy Brown, and his sister Iris, played by Amy Madigan. Justin starts as a devoted man of God. His faith is soon tested, and both storylines are enriched by a dense mythology that places Justin and Ben as 2 individuals with potentially immense power. One is destined to be the creature of light, while the other of dark. The series drew comparisons to Twin Peaks for many reasons, particularly the casting of Michael J. Anderson as Samson. Anderson was known for his role as the man from another place in Twin Peaks. In addition, the 2 series had a mysterious quality that showed our universe as having a parallel entity laced with magic and forces of good and evil. Carnival series creator Daniel Knopf intended the series to be told over 6 seasons. Every 2 seasons would be a book concluding one part of the story and leading to the next. When watching Carnival, the main storyline comes to a head, but so many storylines are left in the air. The first 2 seasons are, at times, as confusing as they are mesmerizing. We can't help but be drawn into this world, and yet, we want to know just what the heck is going on. High production costs were the undoing of this series. After the series cancellation, the creator released information pertaining to the mythology of the series. Everything starts to make more sense, and the more you find out, the more you wish the series had been allowed to tell its complete story. While there is a little bit of satiation for the overall series having most of its story arcs concluded by the end of the second season, there was still so much left to be told and uncovered. The story of good versus evil has been told since the dawn of mankind, but Carnival put a new spin on an old story with a sense of wonder, mystery, and a memorable cast of characters. Well, thank you for watching another episode of 411 Pop Culture. One thing we can surmise after analyzing this list is that the showrunners need to stop ending their series on cliffhangers. Unless there's a guarantee of a show coming back, this is a fairly useless and frustrating gimmick. Networks should have the confidence that if a show is good, it will always merit the return of viewers the following season. When I know a show is returning the following season, I tend to remember the season as a whole and what made me feel as reason enough to go back to it. Few times have I been like, oh yeah, the way that show ended was crazy and I need to know what happened. Instead, I remember the love I felt each week watching the show, and that is what is bringing me back. Of course I understand the gimmick, but if a show has a genuine quality to it or something special, then at least give 80% of the main story arcs a completion in the season finale. And then that way, if it doesn't come back, we have some sort of sense of finality to the rest of the season's major arcs. People are either going to come back or they're not, and it's going to be because of the entire show and not just some gimmicky cliffhanger. So, what are some of your favorite shows that were ended far too soon? Which of these series were some of your favorites, and which ones broke your heart when they ended? Which ones do you wish would be renewed on a popular streaming site, such as The Comeback or The Gilmore Girls? Both series that I thought had nice reunion shows that ended arcs and tied up loose ends and were released on streaming sites. And I think some of these shows could have that same sort of result. Well, please comment, like, or subscribe. I'm your host, Justin Steele, and this is 411 Pop Culture, where real people talk about really everything. Thanks for watching.